All right. Let's turn our Bibles tonight, Proverbs chapter 26, and we just finished talking about the fool, and now we're going to look at four other types of perversions, four other types of immoral persons in just a minute. We're in this chapter, mainly chapter 26. I think the last verse of chapter 25 and all the way through chapter 26 gives us 7 types of immoral persons. And we've seen two. We've seen first of all, it was the undisciplined in verse 28 of chapter 25, and then we saw the fool. It took us a couple weeks to cover and look at the fool. There's a lot of teaching there about different things. And then we're going to start with the sluggard in just a minute. Let's bow our heads, have a word of prayer. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for this day and this opportunity to come and worship you. May you speak to our hearts today. We ask you to just lead, guide, and direct in all things. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, here we go. So the next little few verses is verses 13 through 16 of chapter 26. And it talks about, my translation has the lazy man. Some translations may call it the sluggard. So I might call it the sluggard. I may say lazy, sluggard. It's the same thing, same meaning of the word there. But the first thing that you see here about the sluggard, he's just overall in these verses you'll see that he's just characterized by a lack of movement, a lack of progress. Doesn't move, is really reluctant to do a lot. Another word that you might come across is sloth. And so slow of movement and lack of movement is and progress. You see that here in these verses. But in verse 13, you'll see that this is not just Mama didn't raise him right kind of thing. All 7 of these, and I want to show you this in just a minute, this is where a lot of people just really miss the point, is that all of these boil down to a spiritual problem. He or she is lazy because of a spiritual issue. You say, whoa, how do you get that? Well, I'll show you in just a minute. Number one, it wouldn't be here and being taught. So let's just use common sense for a minute, okay, to justify that statement. Number one, God is telling you not to be lazy. So if you are lazy, that is a spiritual issue because you're just disobedient to God, okay? Number two, if you look in verse 16, it says the lazy man is wiser in his own eyes. So this person who is a sluggard, who is lazy, who is sloth, there is less hope. Let me say it right. There is less hope for the sluggard than there is the fool. Because look at verse 12. Verse 12 says, do you see a man wise in his own eyes? There is more hope for a fool than for him. And then it says about the sluggard, the last thing it says is the lazy man is wiser in his own eyes. So if we were going to rank these people, we'd say, well, the fool is in a little bit better shape than the sluggard is. So it is a spiritual problem. And you know what they say about a fool. A fool says in his heart there is no God. That's not the only way a person can exhibit and demonstrate the characteristics of being a fool. But that's just where it is. Well, you see in verse 13 that the fool is, not the fool, the sluggard, the lazy person, is irrational. Look at what he says. There is a lion in the road, a fierce lion in the streets. Well, I got news for you. Unless you're talking about the Little Rock Zoo and one of the lions jumped out the zoo and is running down University Avenue, you ain't going to see one. So it's an irrational fear. This is something that the lazy person will justify their actions. That's part of their wisdom. Their wisdom is, I'm going to justify why I'm not going to do it. I've got a reason. Well, it turns out that their reason is not even rational. They'll make something up. I really feel like that the person is, because of sin, has gone and lost their mind. In fact, there's a verse, and I wish that I had looked it up and could quote it to you and give you the words, that sin leads to madness. Sin leads to insanity. Sin leads to mental delusions. And so you see here, this is one of those things. There is a lion in the road. A fierce lion is in the streets. I'm not going to go out there. I'm not going to move. I'm not going to get out of my house. I'm not going to get off my couch. I'm not going to get out of my bed because there's a lion out there and I might get eaten alive. That person might even believe that. So deluded by their own being wise in their own eyes. You know, let me tell you something that God will give you. You know what He'll give you? He'll give you what you want. And you want to reject Him? He'll give you that. He'll turn you over to your sin. Now, that's kind of a scary thought. That's kind of, are you unhappy? Are you discontented? And you want this and you want that? And you know what? It might be out of the will of God, and guess what? Eventually God may just give that to you. And it's the worst thing that you could ever have. One of those things is when you one of those ways is when you reject Him and you rebel against Him. You don't want God? Guess what? You won't have God. God gives you what you want. Verse 14. This kind of shows His determination to stay fixed in His comfort zone. If you look at a door, and if you've ever watched a door on its hinges, the part of the door, I know Stan and some of you carpenters in here can relate to this. I know everyone can if you think about it. That part of the door that is up against the hinges in that door jamb, it doesn't travel very far, does it? It actually serves a purpose, though. This sluggard doesn't travel very far. Look at what he says. He says, as a door turns on its hinges, so does the lazy man on his bed. Just with the least amount of effort, he is determined to not move. Whatever he can do, he's got his remote control next to him. He's got his bowl of popcorn right next there. He's got his TV in front of him. He's got his nightstand. He's got everything he needs right here. He's got his TV tray. And by the way, I've got all those things next to my bed. I'm just describing my bedroom, okay? I got a TV in front of me. I got a TV tray right here. I like to pull that TV tray out, put it on my lap, and she laughs at me for doing that. But you know what? This old boy tired sometimes. Sometimes I don't eat dinner till 9 o'clock because I got so much going. So it ain't that I'm lazy, but there's some people that will have all those creature comforts, and that's just the way they live. As a door on its hinges, not moving very far. Almost like this, Stan. Look. What can I do for you? Okay. What can I do for you? Have everything right here, right? Not going to move. Have everything just where you want. And you know what? That takes a lot of ingenuity, doesn't it? Have you ever heard that? I know you have. That expression that they'll work harder to not do anything than it would be just to get the job done and do it. Some people work harder to get out of work than it would be just to do the job, do the work. It's kind of the picture there, because that door on its hinges, it has a pretty strong purpose. Look at verse 15. The lazy man buries his hand in the bowl. I can't help but just almost laugh at this. It's kind of comical. Just the hand. I just picture a big old bowl of popcorn or something, or a big old bowl of spaghetti. Isn't that kind of gross though? is the big old bowl of spaghetti, and that hand just comes down and just crashes into that bowl, and just, oh, I'm so tired. Doesn't even have the energy, he's exhausted. He's exhausted by any form of movement. Just the thought of work exhausts him, makes him so tired. The lazy man buries his hand in the bowl. It wearies him to bring it back to his mouth. And I already told you what verse 16 means, right? There's some pride here. There's some pride. There's some, he knows better. In fact, this sluggard, this lazy person, this sloth, whatever you want to call him, he thinks that he is doing life a lot better than you because he is amused at how you work so hard, and yet he doesn't have to. He's got it all figured out. And so he is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly. I believe it was 7 men who sat at the gate right there with Boaz. It was a common number used for a council of decision makers. And so when the student of the proverb heard this 7 men who can answer sensibly, he knows better than those who make policy at the city gate. He doesn't need 7 men at the city gate. He knows everything. He is wiser in his own eyes. Well, and the scary part of it is there is more hope for a fool than this guy, according to verse 12, if you go back and look at the context of it. So, do you see a man wise in his own eyes? There's more hope for a fool than for that guy, and that guy happens to be the sluggard. The second one we'll look at, and this would be number 4 overall, is the busybody. The busybody is found just in one verse, one proverb, and the busybody turns out to be, in this teaching, really a threat to him or herself. Other people could get hurt by the busybody, but the busybody, being a busybody, will hurt you. It's like a self-inflicted harm. Look at verse 17. He who passes by and meddles, you see that? That's a busybody. That's what one does. They pass by, they see something catches their eye, and they get involved. It wasn't anything to do with them. They don't need to get involved. They just happen to be at the right place at the right time, or maybe I should say at the wrong place at the wrong time for the one who's getting meddled with, right? But they involve themselves in situations that's not theirs to involve themselves with. But they're passing by, they meddle in a quarrel, they see something, for whatever reason, they're attracted to that fight. They see a dispute, and they want to get involved. Well, they pick a side. And maybe there's some other characteristics that is involved in their psychology. That's not really the point. Maybe there is an inflated sense of ego here. Maybe there's an inflated sense of pride that when they see something, a busybody can, I can fix that. They want to be a fixer. Now all of a sudden they're a technician. All of a sudden they're a maintenance worker of people. And they want to fix things. It's not wise. Even if you do think that about yourself. Don't get involved in something. You're a busybody. Don't do that. There's many verses in the New Testament about busybodies too. It's something that Paul taught as a Christian principle to avoid being a busybody. But look at this. Is like compared to one who will come up to a dog and squeeze its ears. I wouldn't recommend that. I wouldn't recommend doing that to a nice dog, because the sensitive tissue behind the ears, and that that bothers a dog. It kind of bothers me too. Don't come up to me and grab my ears and twist my ears, right? Don't scob my knob. Don't do that. And it bothers dogs too. Dogs don't like that. What is he going to do when you come up to that? Can I use you, Wayne, as an example? I'm just kidding. What happens when you come up to a dog and squeeze its ears? Where's my face? It's about that far from that dog's teeth, and he's about to bite my nose off. He'll bite your face off. He'll bite your nose off. Well, not a good idea. So they lack self-control. They interject themselves into other people's matters instead of tending to their own personal matters. And they are confrontational and outspoken. They're very confrontational. They don't know how to keep their peace. They don't know how to control their mouth and hold back. Listen to me very carefully. Sometimes there's a time just to be quiet. Sometimes you need to rein it in and you need to dial it back and just close your mouth. We all have to learn when is the time and place to speak. And so when you get involved in someone else's business, you're like someone squeezing the ears of a dog. You're liable to get bit in the face. And what is that going to do? Scar you. So we're talking about some really serious damage. Look at the troublemaker. This is number 5, isn't it? The troublemaker in verse 18 and 19. Oh boy. Like a madman who throws firebrands, arrows, and death is the man who deceives his neighbor and says, I was only joking. I'm just kidding. Well, this person, like the busybody, is a threat to himself or herself. The troublemaker is a threat to other people. You see I'm sorry for the off-color, unpolitically correct terminology. This person's acting crazy. Throwing arrows at people. Shooting a gun in their range. A bow and arrow. Really? Don't shoot. Oh, I was just kidding. Well, what they do is they are amused at others getting hurt. So let me tell you something. You could be guilty of this and not literally be shooting an arrow. Because there's people out there that's deranged, that's crazy, that do a good job of hiding it, but they're scheming and they're calculating, and they love it when other people get hurt. They like to see other people get hurt. And this is the warning. This is the warning to the son. Watch out in life. There are people that don't care if they hurt you. You need to be very carefully. And so notice there what it says in verse 18. Like a madman who throws firebrands and arrows and death is the man who deceives. So you don't see it coming, do you? You're deceived. They pretend to do good. They put on a good act of doing good. Now that's scary, isn't it? Someone who walks around with piety and who pretends to be a Christian, who pretends to love you, who pretends to like you, but behind all that, they're really wanting to do you serious harm. That's scary. That's scary. That's what the deception is the man who deceives his neighbor. There's deception here. That's what they lean on. That's what they work with, is a deceptive strategy. My strategy, so here's my goal, okay? I want to hurt you. My strategy is to deceive you. That way you won't see it coming, and I can actually accomplish that goal. I can get what I want. What I want is for you to get hurt, so I'm going to deceive you. That's my strategy. So they do serious harm to others, and they take pleasure in harming others. To them, it's what? It's fun. It's fun. They like it. They like it. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it again. Unpolitically correct and all that, and I know y'all don't care. That's why I'm going to say it. But if you do, I'm sorry. They're a nut. I'm sorry. I don't know. I know that's might hurt. They're nuts. Why would you want to hurt people? Here we go. Y'all got your feelings hurt? I don't know how else to put it. Just in everyday language. You better be careful. That person will hurt you. Here's the slanderer, and they are destroyers. A slanderer. Someone who will lie and lie about you, talk about you behind your back, and just run you down. Look at verse 20. He says, where there is no wood, the fire goes out. Wow. Wow. Common, everyday sense. You take away the fuel, the fire goes out. Well, how's he going to use this? Oh, I see. Where there is no liar, strife ceases. At the bottom of almost every problem between people, there might be 6 or 7 people involved, and there might be a problem. There's at least one liar. There's at least one liar. You take away the liar, problem solved. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? We don't have a problem if there's not a liar. You know what that tells me? That tells me that when there's a problem, there's been things that's communicated that's not accurate, that is speculative, that's made up. There is a liar involved in that. And then other people believe it. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But here's what the slanderer does. In verse 20, you see that where there is no wood, the fire goes out. Where there is no talebearer, strife ceases. The liar sustains the problem. They keep the problem going because of just their mere presence. Because they are there, the problem keeps happening. The problem is going on. So they sustain the problem. They keep it going. Look at verse 21. These are some of the slanderer's attributes. As charcoal is to burning coals and wood to fire, here it comes. A contentious man to kindle strife. Two things here. Here's their 2 attributes. Number 1, they're contentious, which means they have a desire for strife. They have a desire for strife. Here's the second attribute. They're calculating. Look at what it says. It says that a contentious man to kindle strife. It means that he or she has taken an initiative to start the fire. They are starting the problem. They have thought about it. They have calculated. And what they're wanting to do is they're wanting there to be a problem. Can y'all relate to this in your everyday life? Yeah, you've heard these stories before, haven't you? Because you've lived them. I've lived with people like this. I still live with people like this. And you've got to keep them at arm's length. They are dangerous and deadly, toxic, poisonous people. You better be careful. You better guard yourself. And that's the point of this. You're never going to be able to put yourself on some isolated island and get away from these kinds of poisonous and wicked people. So they're contentious, they're calculating. Look at verse 22. They have a powerful influence on others. Ooh, now that's kind of scary, isn't it? Well, we just talked about the group. There's at least one liar in a group when there's a problem. And look at verse 22. It says, the words of a talebearer are like tasty trifles. You know, we stopped at Buc-ee's a couple weeks ago, and when I stop at Buc-ee's, I like to get the beef jerky. And I just like to nibble on those tasty little pieces of beef jerky. Don't y'all? Y'all like beef? Y'all like that? Yeah. It's a little tasty. Well, this is what the comparison is that the words of a talebearer, they're juicy, aren't they? They're the latest thing. They're somewhat bizarre, and they catch our attention, and we want to hear them. Ooh, I want to hear more. The liar knows this. That's why they will be able to embellish things to get your attention and for you to swallow it hook, line, and sinker. The community craves these things, and they eat the lies and the deception. And they go down into the inmost body. So what that is that the community is affected very deeply by it. Goes all the way down into the body, affected deeply. And let me tell you something that is doubly bad, is those who crave these little morsels from Buc-ee's. And it goes all the way down to, and you want more, and I want to hear another lie, and I want to hear another little juicy piece of information about someone. What did you say? Did you hear this? Did you hear that? All these tale-bearing, all this slandering, all these lies, you become just as guilty. You become just as guilty. Now let's wrap up here with the son's personal enemy in verse 23 through 28. The son's personal enemy. You are going to have in your life, if you haven't already, at least one person in your life that hates you. And that's the lesson that's being taught. Raise your hand if you've ever had anyone in your life that's ever hated you. Oh yeah. Every hand go up. There's been situations like that where I'm like, why? What? Like, why? Don't ask why. Just listen to the lesson. Listen to the lesson. Because he doesn't tell you why. He just says it's going to happen. And so here's what you do. Well, look at verse 23. I'm sorry. It starts in 23. But the identity of what he's talking about is in the first part of verse 24. You see it? He who hates. He who hates. This is so laid out so symmetrically, might be a good word. It's very organized. The first part of each of verse 23, 24, and 25. Let me read them. Okay? Follow along with me. First part of verse 23. Fervent lips with a wicked heart. Okay? Now stop right there. Now look at the first line of verse 24. He who hates disguises it with his lips. You see that? Now go back and I want you to make sure you're seeing the connection. Look at verse 23 again. Fervent lips. You see that? With a wicked heart. Look at verse 24 again. He who hates disguises it with his lips. You see that? Look at verse 25. When he speaks kindly, do not believe him. So in the first part of each of those verses, you're seeing that the enemy will disguise his wicked heart with his speech. I'm going to say that again because you need to take it in. This is a very important lesson. Your enemy, one who hates you, that's how he is identified in verse 24. He who hates. Do you see that? In verse 23, fervent lips, warm lips, assuming kind, warm, kind lips, but a wicked heart. Are you telling me, this is you, okay? This is you. This is you responding to me. I'm going to put words in your mouth, okay? Now, Brother John, are you telling me that there's people out there that will seem nice, but they'll have bad intentions in their heart towards me? Please don't be gullible. Please don't be naive. You're going to meet a lot of friendly people on the way, son. This is what Dad would say, wouldn't he? The son would ask, Daddy, maybe they're going fishing the next day. And he'd say, Daddy, you know what you taught me yesterday about fervent lips and a wicked heart? Are you saying that I'm going to meet people that's going to talk nice to me, but they mean to hurt me? And he'll say, son, that's exactly what I'm telling you. Doesn't it almost want to make you cry? A wicked heart. They intend to hurt you, but they come across really nice. Well, we call that a wolf in sheep's clothing. You remember the disciples said, "Do we get rid of the tares in the wheat?" And Jesus said, "No. Just let them grow up together, and they're all going to be judged by God one day, and the tares are going to be burned up in hell, and the wheat is going to be I'm going to save the wheat." Dear friend, there's going to be some people that you're going to think are the nicest people in the world, and they are the devil. They are the devil. Listen to this. Look at verse 24. I'm going to read it again. He who hates disguises it with his lips. Look at this, verse 25 again. When he speaks kindly, do not believe him. Do not believe him. Now look at the comparison made to and the content of his wicked heart. Let's learn about his heart for a minute. Are you ready? Or her heart. Look at the second part of verse 23. Are like earthenware covered with silver dross. So when they would melt down silver, there would be what would come to the surface called slag. They would scrape it off. It was the impurities. And what he's saying is this: their fervent lips are like slag. They might be shiny. There's a saying. What is that? Everything that shines is not gold, or everything that sparkles is not gold. Something like that. It glitters. That's it. Thank you. Thank you. I'm bad with jokes, and I'm bad with remembering things like that. Y'all bail me out. Thank you, Miss Velma. Everything that glitters is not gold. That's what he's telling you there. This silver dross, this shiny coating over the earthenware, doesn't mean it's good, doesn't mean it's valuable. It just means it's covered up. So it's covered up with really slag. The impurities, the part you would throw away, Stan, right? That's the silversmith would take that and throw it away. It's trash. And that is exactly what their fervent lips, their warm speech is trash. It's slag. So there's a comparison made there to slag. Here's the content of the wicked heart in the second part of verse 24. They lay up deceit within themselves. They are so good at deception, they are just full of ways to deceive people. They are a closet full of... You ever like going to a closet? I remember when I was a kid, and I'd love to look in the closet of like my grandma. You know, my grandma's closet. She had games in there. She had all kinds of fun stuff to look at. You know, and I'm talking about when I'm like 5, okay? 6. Not when I'm 15, all right? I was starting to think about trucks and hunting guns and stuff when I was 15, but when I was 5, I remember just looking at, oh, look at all that. That's so cool, man. Look at that. Can I play with that and all this stuff? Well, I'm telling you, just full of treasures. This person is just full of deceit. Full of deceit. Look at verse. I know I brought back some good memories right there. I could see it on your faces, didn't you? Did you remember that? You remember looking at Grandma's closet and seeing it so interesting. Look at there's a comparison made at the end of verse 25. And I'll read the first part. When he speaks kindly, do not believe him, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. That denotes just comprehensively wicked. Completely and utterly wicked. All of the wickedness that you could ever come up with, if you could summarize it in 7 points, that is what it is. Well, look at that was the deception. Here is the destruction in 26 through 28. Here is the destruction. There's a promise of destruction in verse 26. Don't think, now you may not see it. You may not see them destroyed. But God will destroy them. You say, He's going to destroy someone who speaks kind words? Next day on the fishing bank. Yes, son. That's right. God's going to destroy those who have wicked hearts. Even when they speak kind. Wait a minute. That reminds me of something. God doesn't judge on the outward. He judges by the inward. I don't want sacrifice. I want mercy. I want a broken and contrite spirit. That's what I want. That's what God says. So there's a lot of people going through the motions and pretending to be something, but they will be destroyed. Look at verse 26. Though his hatred is covered by deceit, his wickedness will be revealed before the assembly. That's God's people, the congregation. Because guess what? They won't be there. They won't be there. Look at verse 27 and 28. The sovereign Lord. You say, what about justice? Well, sometimes you may not see the justice, but justice happens. God is a God of justice. And God is going to make the wrongs right, and He's going to make sure that He honors the righteous. So look at verse 27. The one who hates, the one who's deceitful, the one with the wicked heart, in verse 27, it says, whoever digs a pit will fall into it. And he who rolls a stone will have it rolled back on him. What an interesting image of someone, thinking that they can do everything on their own without God's help is like a picture of one who rolls a stone up a hill. A big old boulder. I can do this. It's kind of like the attitude of the world. I got this. And they beat on their chest. And I don't need God in my life. I can do this. Well, guess what? There's going to be a point to where you're going to trip, you're going to stumble, and that rock is going to roll right back on you like a steamroller, and it's going to crush you. I promise you, you don't got this. That's why we need the Lord. They're going to be destroyed by their, it's kind of like you go back, they're wise in their own eyes. They think they got this. They think they can do it on their own. They think they don't know better. They don't think they need instruction. That's they don't need to be taught. They don't need it. They're wise in their own eyes. Verse 28, that's their work. Their work will destroy them in verse 27. But look in verse 28. Their words will destroy them. And that's what they lived on all their life. They made a career of it. Fooling people. Talking kindly in order to destroy them. They made a living on it. That's what they did. I can't help but think about Jezebel right there. Boy, Jezebel, at one time she was the Bible says she was beautiful. Look at on the outside. And I promise you she could probably flirt and get her way and bat them eyelashes. She made a living off of her looks. But there was a time in her life where all of her means of trying to get what she wanted with her flattery, with her good looks, with her prominent position as being the wife of the king, and she was a daughter of a king. Was she not? Wasn't she a princess from Syrophoenicia, a Phoenician princess? I believe. Go back in 1 Kings and study it. I believe she was a Phoenician princess. She was royalty. She always got what she wanted. And she hated Elijah. She hated God's men. She hated all God's men and all His prophets. But there was a day where she tripped, stumbled, and fell over that balcony, and it was over. Kind of like what we're seeing here. A lying tongue hates those who are crushed by it, and a flattering mouth works ruin. Their words. This lying tongue is the person who was wicked in his heart and lied, and they hate those who are crushed by it. A flattering mouth works ruin. Their words destroy them. Well, there's your 7 immoral people that you want to avoid. And there's even some guidance there on how to survive in this world around them. So, number 1, be one of them. Don't be one of them, because they're going to be destroyed. Number 2, there's some survival methods there on how you can navigate around as you walk with the Lord and live your life, and you have to deal with them. They're very dangerous. We'll look at friends next time in chapter 27. We're going to talk about friends. It might be a little more positive. I know this has a little bit of a tone of, it's almost like a Halloween tone, isn't it? It's kind of scary, like you could dress up like 7 different Halloween characters, right? And they'd all be scary, wouldn't they? From Proverbs 26, right? Yeah, the sluggard. Yeah. Oh, the 7 abominations, 7 things God. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? All right. Let's remember Van tomorrow.